Good afternoon, everyone. Distinguished member, the president of our great institute, the 64th president, Dr. Aruna Yaya, MNI, PDFCA, the vice president, the first and second deputy vice, the council member here present, distinguished colleagues. It's a great pleasure that I welcome you all to this important and timely webinar organized by the Tax and Fiscal Policy Faculty of our great institute on the title Nigerian Tax Reform Unveiled, Key Highlights and Implementation Pathway. This free webinar is part of our continuous commitment to equipping members with up-to-date knowledge, fostering professional excellence, and promoting thought leadership in the area of national importance. As you're all aware, Nigeria is undergoing a series of transformative tax reform driven by the need to enhance revenue mobilization, promote economic resilience, and improve fiscal transparency. We are particularly honored to have our guest speaker, despite his tight schedule, Mr. and one of our major persons, Professor Taiwo Daily FCA, the chairman of Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee, as a leading voice and architect of the ongoing reform in the country. His insights and perspective promise to be both enlightening and action-proven. To our host, the chief host himself, the 64th president of our great institute, Malam Aruna Mayaya, MNI PhD FCA, I appreciate your leadership and dedication to professional development. And to the chairman of the tax faculty, who is also going to be the moderator for this event, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro FCA, and to our highly engaged audience and chartered accountants and finance professional here with us. I thank you all for making time to be part of this learning experience. Dear professional colleagues, please take full advantage of the rich discussion that you are getting directly from the man himself, and be reminded that this session attracts 5 MCPD credit hours, recognizing your commitment to continuous development in this institute. Once again, I welcome you all and wish you an impactful and engaging session. On that note, I present to you the president of our great institute for his presidential address and to declare this webinar open. Malam Haruna Umayaya, MNI, PhD, FCA. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, the RCE, the Vice President, Ajia Quinsley Segosime, the First Deputy Vice President, Dr. Etofolano Suji, Second Deputy Vice President, Dr. Oye Akisulere, Immediate Past President, Chief Alaribe, Council members present in this, those who join us online, Registrar Chief Executive, our special speaker, guest speaker, the Chairman, Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform, Professor Taiwo Oyedele, FCA, the Chairman, Tax Faculty, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro, my professional colleagues. It is my delight to welcome you all to this special webinar. I call it special because we are the first professional organization to have in our midst the chairman himself after the bill has been signed into act by the president of the federation to speak to the issues as it relates to professionals. The theme of this discussion is Nigerian Tax Reform Unveiled, Key Highlights and Implementation Pathway. I know the area that will interest our members most is Section 33, subsection 1 of Tax Administration Bill Act that talk to issue of tax agents and so on like that. I know the chairman, Professor Edele, is very passionate about that, and they will give us insight and other areas that professionals will be required in terms of implementation pathway. What will be the key roles of the professionals in this tax space to ensure that by January, when the implementation will commence, we are all abreast with it, and we contribute our quota to the development of tax in Nigeria. On that note, I welcome you all to listen attentively. It is 5 credit hours. We are very generous because of the importance attached to this exercise. Normally, webinars take 2 or 3 credit hours, but because it is the chairman that is speaking to us, we approve that whoever attend this will attract 5 credit hours. So on that note, I welcome you all, and I wish us all fruitful deliberations. And on behalf of the council and 67 members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, I declare this webinar open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I invite the Deputy Registrar Technical to take over from there to introduce our guest and the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Registrar Chief Executive, sir. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce the moderator for today's session, Yomi Olugbenro, FCA, FCTI, FCS, Partner West Africa Tax Leader, Deloitte, Chairman, Tax and Fiscal Policy Management Faculty, ICAN, Dean Emeritus, Indirect Tax Faculty, CITN, President, Freeland Foundation. Mr. Yomi Olugbenro is a distinguished tax practitioner, fiscal policy strategist, and business advisor with over 2 decades of post-qualification experience spanning multiple sectors, including banking, manufacturing, and professional services. He currently serves as a partner and the West Africa tax leader at Deloitte, where he leads strategy and advisory efforts across the region, driving innovation in tax policy, compliance, and regulatory affairs. Yomi holds a bachelor's degree in accounting and a master's in business administration, and is an alumnus of the prestigious University of Manchester, United Kingdom. He is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICAN, the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN, and the Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers, CIS. He became a chartered accountant in 1997 and has since established himself as a leading voice in tax discourse, both within and beyond Nigeria. Within Deloitte, Mr. Olugbenro has served in several strategic roles, including tax risk leader for West Africa and Central Africa, Dean of the Deloitte School of Tax, and a core member of the Deloitte think tank. He is also a member of the Deloitte West Africa Executive Committee, where he contributes to the firm's leadership and governance across the region. Mr. Yomi is the chairman of the Tax and Fiscal Policy Management Faculty of ICAN and was previously the dean of the Indirect Tax Faculty of CITN. He continues to serve as a member of the Board of Taxation Standards and Practice Monitoring Committee and is the coordinating dean of the CITN faculties, where he plays a vital role in shaping Nigeria's tax education and professional standards. Mr. Olugbenro is a regular contributor to the public discourse on fiscal policies and tax reform. He speaks at local and international conferences and features frequently in print and broadcast media, offering expert insights on tax, economic policy, and public finance. He is a strong advocate for tax simplification, education, and automation, an agenda he strictly promotes through his social media platforms and engagements with policymakers and the public. In addition to his professional pursuits, Yomi is a passionate mentor and community leader. He's the president of the Free Indeed Foundation, a faith-based non-governmental organization focused on youth empowerment, education, and social transformation. He serves as a patron to several youth associations in schools and colleges, investing time in nurturing future leaders. His career reflects an unwavering commitment to excellence, integrity, and service values that continues to define his contribution to the accounting and tax profession in Africa and beyond. You will agree with me that Mr. Olugbenro is perfectly primed to moderate this section. It is also my distinct pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today's event, Professor Taiwo Oyedele, FCA. Professor Oyedele is a highly respected authority in tax policy, fiscal governance, and economic reform. With over 20 years of experience in finance, taxation, and business strategy, he's a recognized thought leader in Nigeria and across Africa. Known for his practical insights, public engagements, and dedication to nation building, he currently serves as the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform, where he leads the design and implementation of reform initiatives aimed at improving Nigeria's fiscal framework, revenue generation, and economic resilience. Prior to his appointment, Professor Oyedele served as the fiscal policy partner and Africa tax leader at PwC, where he advised numerous private and public institutions across the continent on tax strategy, regulatory framework, and policy implementation. He also held the position of chairman of the Tax and Fiscal Policy Faculty of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, where he played a vital role in shaping professional standards, research, and advocacy within the accounting profession. He was also the chairman of the West African Debt Management Roundtable of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, a fellow of the Nigeria Leadership Initiative, and a member of the Global Tax Forum. Professor Oyedele is a professor of practice at Babcock University and a guest lecturer at the Lagos Business School, where he teaches fiscal policy development, finance, and strategic leadership. A sought-after keynote speaker, media contributor, and commentator, he is committed to demystifying complex policy issues for professionals and the broader public. He's an alumnus of the London School of Economics, Yale University, and the Harvard Kennedy School, and continues to mentor and inspire future leaders. Professor Oyedele is also the founder and president of the Impact Africa Foundation, a non-profit organization that provides scholarships to indigent students, empowers youth, and supports social developments across Nigeria. His career reflects a deep commitment to integrity, innovation, and excellence, and he continues to influence both policy and practice at national and international levels. You're welcome, sirs. I hand over now to the moderator, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so very much, Deputy Registrar Technical Services. A very warm welcome to everyone to this very important webinar organized by our institute and championed by the Faculty of Tax and Fiscal Policy Management. I know we've had from our president and our registrar, but just before we jump into yielding the floor for the reason why we're here, I think it's very important that I recognize once again our 61st president and indeed the ICAN presidency, particularly because this is a strong statement of commitment and relevance and importance that the council and the presidency attach to this conversation that we're having today. And I must admit that the president took, a very direct interest and leadership in making sure that we're able to have this webinar this fast. It's just about a week that the law was passed, and the president was very interested in making sure that all members get on board of this conversation quite quickly. So, Malam Haruna Yaya, MNI FCA, we are very grateful. We thank you. And I know that we have quite a number of members of the ICAN presidency, vice president. We want to thank you for joining, Madam Quinsley Segosime. I think I also cited the first deputy vice president earlier on, Dr. Suji. We are grateful that you are here. To our second deputy vice president, Chief Akinsulire, we thank you for joining us. I'm not sure if I've seen IPP, but I had the information that it was also going to be on. Chief DCS Alaribe, we are grateful to you. To our honorary treasurer, Mr. Layinka, and indeed all other council members that are joining. We are very grateful. Some of you are joining across all the various social platforms. I know that this webinar is being multicasted across all the social media platform of the Institute. So we are indeed very grateful to have everyone. And to all of our members, thank you for joining this important webinar. Like the president said, there is even a 5-point credit hours that is we're going to be entitled to. So that makes it even so great. We're here for a very important conversation. Over the last, almost getting to 2 years now, if there's been any conversation that has occupied the landscape, whether professionally or even within the polity, as we had it, the conversation around the fiscal policy and tax reform, the bold reform that the present administration embarked upon has been quite central and frontal. But we are very grateful for a number of reasons. We're grateful for eventually getting this, passed. It was a very turbulent journey, as some of us will know. As at the time we got like midway to or towards the end of the calendar year, quite a number of people were, very worried as to what the outcome could be. But through the commitment of Mr. President and all of the officers of government that have their contributions in getting this done, and more importantly, the leadership, the effort, and the commitment of the chairman himself, our own Taiwo Yedele, who had put in quite a lot, personally, professionally, and need I say emotionally and psychologically as well, just withering through. And so we're here, and we're very grateful to him for accepting. I know I have a little bit of insight into how his schedule has been and currently is. And so for him to have accepted to come and have this conversation, it's really, really an important one. So the conversation today, we've dedicated one solid hours. I'm sure you all know that if we ask Taiwo to speak for 3 hours, 5 hours on this subject, we wouldn't exhaust all that we need to exhaust. But we're going to allow him 1 hour to take us through the key highlight of the law as it has now been passed. We've had quite a lot of the bills, and we've seen that multiple changes, conversations had happened along the line. But now we have all the 4 laws passed into law. We are expecting the official gazette. So he will be sharing with us what the key highlights are, but more importantly, what next, right? How do we move from the law reform to implementation, and what does that mean for us? What do we need to do as professionals? So that's why we're here, and it's my pleasure and honor to yield the floor to my friend and my brother and our own professional colleague, Mr. Taiwo Yedele, who just turned 50, by the way. So it's golden Taiwo that we're going to be hearing today. So we'll see how the voice of a 50-year-old former, tax consultant, now wearing more Babariga than jacket. But today I think I see him in tie and suit. So, but we're going to hear how he sound after clocking 50. So, Taiwo, it's a pleasure to welcome you back to the faculty that you love so much and the institute that you have put in so much in supporting. Chairman, Presidential Tax and Fiscal Policy Reform. I yield the floor to you to take us through the next 1 hour. And after that, we'll then take the question and answers.
All right. Thank you very much, my dear brother Yomi. I sound exactly the same as before. And good afternoon to all the participants, members and non-members. And I have to acknowledge my president, the president of the institute, and is the reason why I'm here now. Because when the president calls you and say you have to come and make presentation, you don't have many options. So I have to find a way to make it work. I also commend the leadership of this because I'm one of the people that will easily criticize when we are not doing well. So when we are doing well, we should also acknowledge it. So this is good, and this effort needs to be sustained. And of course, you can count on me to support as much as possible. So thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to other council members and leadership of the institute from the secretariat as well as from the faculty. I'll try and see if I can share my screen or if the secretariat can share it from the back end. But okay, so thank you. So what I want to speak to you, and Yomi is very right. If you leave me alone, I won't know when it is evening. But because of the expediency of time for all of us, I'll try and keep it to the allotted time. So what I want to speak to us about is the Nigeria's tax reforms, looking at the key highlights and implementation pathways. So if you move on, the outline for this conversation is first to look at the overview, essentially saying what is it that we're doing, why are we doing it, and what is the context. I always like to refer to, for those of us who watch Bloomberg, Bloomberg has a tagline of context changes everything. What may look, in a particular way in one context may have a vastly different implication or meaning in another context. So putting issues in proper perspective is very important. I'll then speak to you about the tax and fiscal reform. I like to keep reminding people that this is not just about tax reforms. The tax reform bills is the reason why many people know that there's even a committee in the first place. But the work of that committee, is a lot more than tax. The tax component of our work is even barely 20-25%. So there's a lot of other things we're doing as well around the fiscal space. Then I'll highlight some of the key changes in the tax laws, the new tax laws. I would also tell you the expected outcomes, but more importantly is to conclude and see, so what? What does that mean for you? What should you be doing? And how can you position yourself to take advantage of these opportunities presented by the reforms? So if you go on, the context is that we're not where we would like to be, but we are no longer where we used to be. And that's a fact. That's not even up for debate because it's a statement of fact. And the facts to support that include some of the points you have on this slide. To acknowledge that we're not at the destination as of yet, I have items that I call work in progress. In other words, we're still working on these and we're hoping that things will continue to improve. And then there are those where we already have the positive indicators, and what we just need to do is to sustain them. So I'll take them one by one very quickly, because one other observation I've made over my career is that accountants generally, maybe it's even worse for tax practitioners, that is, accountants who specialize in tax matters, is that they are very quick to jump into tax. So you give them financial statement, they're looking for the number of what to disallow and what to allow. Like that's not how you're supposed to start. You're supposed to understand the business first. What are they even doing? Who are their competitors in the sector? What was the trend over the last 5 years? What are the risks of this sector? What are the exposures? What are the opportunities? Leadership. So try and understand the business first. And then you now understand the financial statement. And then you now do the tax comes or tax returns. So I know that now that we have tax laws, new tax laws, many accountants and tax practitioners will jump into those tax laws without the context. And without the context, you'll not be able to make a lot out of it. So I'm starting with the context. So some of the economic indicators that we are tracking where we still need some progress to be made include exchange rates. And I was having a session this morning with Standard Chartered Bank. And one of the things I said to them is that if only our exchange rate has been managed better over the past 10 years, today Nigeria will be a $1 trillion economy. The price of petrol per liter will be less than 300 naira. Band A will be less than 1/5 of what it is, 20% of what it is. The size of the middle class in Nigeria will be at least 50 million people. And Nigeria will be super attractive to all investors, whether they are local or whether they are foreign. Per capita income will put Nigeria in the upper middle class income. Just imagine just these few things I've said now, because of just one thing we could have done well, but we did terribly wrong, especially in the last few years of the past administration, no thanks to the CBN governor at the time. We thoroughly mismanaged our FX. And one of the reasons why the FX has not been stable, why we're talking about 1,500, 1,550 today, is not because Nigeria was not earning enough dollars. Many people get this wrong. They'll say Nigeria is not a productive country. We're not producing, we're just consuming, we import toothpicks, right? Those things are good for narrative if we want applause from the streets. But when you drill down to real data, that's not the reason why Naira is struggling. The fact is, over the past 10 years, Nigeria has earned more dollars than Nigeria has spent, which means, on balance, Naira should have been stable over the past 10 years. And if you compare Nigeria with Kenya or South Africa, you then see that at comparable level of balance of payment, in other words, our dollar income or receipt, less dollar spending or expenses, in Nigeria is comparable to the picture in Kenya and the picture in South Africa. But guess what? The Naira has lost more than 6 times the value of Kenya shillings to the dollar and the value of South African rand to the dollar. One major reason why that is the case is Nigeria is the only country out of those 3 countries where they like to look for dollars that they don't need. Discretionary demand for dollars. Unproductive demand for dollars. Somebody will just wake up and go and buy dollar and put in a bank account. Another person will buy dollar and keep it at home. Even people that are not stealing money, the politicians that are stealing money will now buy $1 million, $2 million cash and go and keep at home. How is Naira supposed to be stable like that? And there's not a single transaction in Nigeria, not one, that anybody needs dollar banknotes to carry out. Did anybody find one transaction like that? Please tell me. Anybody that needs dollar legitimately in Nigeria needs it for foreign spending, either when you go abroad or when you are paying for supply from abroad. Anyway, that's one of the issues that we have to deal with. And it has both the monetary side and the fiscal side. From the fiscal side, we identify a few areas where we have not been helping our naira. One of it is we ask companies and businesses in Nigeria to pay certain taxes in dollars to the extent that those transactions were conducted in foreign currency. Now, what's the logic in that? There's no logic. Somebody just didn't understand how foreign exchange is supposed to work sometimes back. I don't know whether it was 20 years or 30 years, and they wrote that ridiculous provision in our laws, such that ICAN, for example, does not earn dollars, or maybe they've started earning dollars and I'm not aware. But ICAN does not earn dollars. ICAN, for this application we're using for this program now, is probably paid for in dollars. So imagine ICAN wants to buy ARP for processing, member stuff, payments, for doing Zoom meetings. They pay in dollars, and then there's VAT and withholding tax, and they're still looking for dollars from Nigeria to pay Nigerian government taxes. These amounts sums up to around $4 to $5 billion a year. Unnecessary demand on the naira. So in the tax laws, new tax laws, that is one of the issues that have been addressed. We also have companies the likes of NLNG. So you know that if you're entitled to 1.2 million dollars a year, and somebody says, should I give you your 1.2 million dollars, 100,000 every month, or should I just put it together and give you 1.2 million dollars at the end of the year? As an accountant or anybody who understands finance, you will quickly jump at 100,000 naira per month has been preferred. Why? Because it helps you to manage your cash flow all along the year, and it also has this small time value of money that you get. So under the new tax laws, the Nigeria LNG will now be paying their taxes on a monthly basis, just like the upstream oil companies. So along with other measures that if you carry out any transaction in foreign exchange, we would only reference the official rate. This is to discourage people from going to the parallel market now that we have the liquidity in the official market. All of these are meant to complement the effort of the monetary authorities in one, ensuring that Naira recovers, appreciates in value, and then it's stable for longer. So we have sticky inflation. Our inflation is high and it's affecting the cost of doing business. We also have issues to do with rising poverty level. So the level of poverty in Nigeria is high. More than half of our population live in extreme poverty, so to say, or multidimensional poverty where they do not have access to a lot of the things they need to make their lives meaningful. Despite the fact that unemployment rate statistically is low, poverty level is high. What does that mean? It means that we lack decent jobs. People are actually working, but they remain in poverty. So the solution to their problem is not to give them more hard work to do, is to find them decent jobs so that they don't even have to. There are people who are working 12, 15 hours in Nigeria and they live in poverty, right? So it's not to work harder. That's not the solution to their problem. Maybe they even need to work like 6 or 7 hours a day and they can earn more. So the responsibility to make that possible rests with government in terms of policies. We have insecurity challenges and social discontent. Anything and everything you say can be used against you, especially if you are working for government or with the government, like someone like me. The things I used to say before and I'll get away with them when I was in private sector. Once I moved to the public sector, everything is misinterpreted. There's conspiracy theory. Everything is twisted. Some of these are cooked up. And I was saying recently that if Nigerians truly want their country to be better, they need to stop discouraging honest and competent people who want to help. Because working in the public sector is not attractive, or there's no money there unless you want to go and steal. And if you're a honest person, you're not there to go and steal. You make all the sacrifices and then they are abusing you. So these are some of the areas where Nigerians, and as I was thinking about my own experience, I then remember Sheon Onigbinde. Many of us will know Sheon Onigbinde, who runs budgets. Budget does a lot of analysis about the budget, exposing corruption, duplicated, projects in the budget, budget padding. They do that very diligently. And then she was invited to come and support the budget office, Ministry of Finance, and statistics to improve Nigeria's budget, and statistics. And then the Nigerian people start abusing the young man. They abused the guy up to the point that he resigned the appointment. So I said to myself, what do Nigerians actually want? Is it that they just want everybody to be complaining? But complaint has not solved the problem of any country in the whole world, and it will never solve any problem. If you really want to solve problems, you need to get out, roll up your sleeve, and get into the mud and sweating and get the job done. That's how countries are built. So government also needs to do better with policy coordination, monetary, fiscal, trade, and other policies, as well as public communication. Even when we have good stories to tell, we are very reluctant to say them in the public sector. And I still don't know why people don't offer to communicate regularly. Then we have positive things that are working for us. Some of them include our trade surplus. If you have been following this economic data, and if you have not, I will encourage you to be doing it regularly. There shouldn't be a day that goes by, and as an accountant, you have not listened to business news. You should just make it like it is as important as waking up to take your bath. It's as important as having a meal at least once a day. It's as important as taking water. You must follow business news, economic news. If you can, I'll say do one in Nigeria minimum regularly and do one foreign. It might be Bloomberg, it might be, Arise International, it might be CNBC. Just find something and do it regularly. So if you've been, and then read also news. If you've been following that, you will be aware by now that we have significant surpluses in terms of what we exported minus the things we imported, at least from the tangible product point of view. We have these amounts running into billions of dollars surplus over the past 4-5 quarters. And then even when you now take the overall balance of payment, because it goes beyond physical goods, right? You have to add services, you have to add intellectual property, you have to add other obligations like paying interest on loan. Even that is positive, which means Nigeria is receiving more dollars than Nigeria is spending, which is the reason why it's difficult to explain why Naira is struggling to appreciate in value. Inflation globally is slowing down. So many countries, even in the US where they brought tariff and there was a lot of concern, the inflation has been very moderate. We have seen in the Euro area, we've seen in the UK, we've seen in Asia, we've seen in South Africa here, we've seen in Kenya, we've seen even in Ghana. So inflation is coming down globally, and that's making the central bank to cut interest rates. When central banks begin to cut interest rates, it's good news for us because it means that by cutting interest rate, the cost of fund, one, will reduce, and those who are looking for higher returns will leave those people and come to us. And when they come to us, we have more dollars than we need, and that will also help us to stabilize exchange rates and cost of funds. We also have declining budget deficits. In relative terms, our budget deficit has been declining and government has been spending more on infrastructure. Although this is just a drop in the ocean, we still have a long way to go. If you do the analysis of Nigeria's infrastructure inventory, right, the stock of infrastructure as a percentage of GDP, Nigeria is around 35%. Compared to the likes of South Africa is over 85%. And there are many developed countries where it's more than 100%. So that just tells you, take all your infrastructure as a percentage of your GDP, it tells you the level of development and also gives you an idea of the gap, the deficit you have in infrastructure that you need to deal with as a matter of urgency. Part of the work we're doing is trying to get government to be more intentional in how they spend our limited resources, whether it's from tax or natural resources. I hold the view, for example, that the convention center, International Conference Center in the FCT, that was recently renovated at 39 billion naira. I said to myself that if we have been a little bit more intentional, you know what we could have done with that amount? The most viable conference centers in Nigeria are in Abuja, not even in Lagos. Conference centers are more viable in Abuja than Lagos. In other words, that international conference center is a viable project. We could have sold it to Transcorp. We could have sold it to any private sector, and they will build that international conference center to world class standard, and they will run it, make money, hire people, and pay taxes. Imagine we now take that 39 billion naira and we identify 39 primary schools in the FCT and just invest $1 billion, sorry, not dollar, I wish it is dollar, 1 billion naira in each primary school in the FCT. Just imagine for a moment the level of transformation that that would have brought, not only for today, but for the future of the country, about how we raise our young ones. Yeah. So this is about being very pragmatic, being forward thinking in how we apply the limited resources such that every 1 naira and every 1 kobo that we earn is applied in the most productive way. In Nigeria today, unfortunately, sometimes when the money is not stolen, the money is wasted. We have projects that are executed with multiple times the real cost of the project. We can't continue like that because we don't have all the resources in the world. These are areas where professionals like accountants on this call today have to work together. We need to call out these issues. We need to hold government to account. When we see anyone that is trying to help, let's support them. If, for example, you are on this call today and you are not following budgets, go and follow budget. That's the least you can do. Budget should not do analysis of the budget and then there is 3 likes and 4 retweets. And then when they find somebody that is half naked or somebody slap another person and then they have 2 million likes. Like, our priorities are even wrong as a people. Because at the end of the day, if you have platforms that are trying to hold government to account and they see that they have the numbers behind them, politicians respect numbers. When they see 1 million, 2 million likes, 200,000 retweet, they pay attention because they know it counts. So in our own little way, at least we are the educated finance people. We are people that should ordinarily understand the budget. If somebody is trying to promote transparency on the budget, let us support them. So that's one thing you can do. Then we have improvement in tax to GDP ratio. For many years, our tax to GDP ratio was under 10% and was one of the lowest in the world. But the good news is, as I speak to you today, our tax to GDP ratio as at the end of 2024 is now about 13.5%. Remarkable improvement in just 1 year. So we need to now sustain that. Our target is to get to a minimum of 18% of tax to GDP ratio over the next 2 to 3 years. And we also have the debt service to revenue ratio. At some point, Nigeria was spending 97% of its revenue at the federal level just to service debts. This is almost the entire revenue we earn. We were spending it to service, not to pay back, but just to service debt. In essence, everything else we did, from paying salaries, from paying overhead, from doing a bit of infrastructure, all of it, we borrowed again. So when you borrow to take care of borrowing, you get to a debt trap and your cost of borrowing will keep going up. And if you don't control that, you get to a point where there's no return, the point of no return. That is the point where the only option you have is just to keep printing money and spending it. You end up with a Venezuela situation or a Zimbabwe situation where people will carry money and the size of the money is bigger than the items that they want to buy. At some point in Venezuela, people left money on the streets. People used money, banknote, to try and design some bags. They were doing stuff, and then people went back to trade by barter. At some point in Zimbabwe, their inflation was measured in millions. You know, this one that we are talking about 20-something% inflation. No, inflation in Zimbabwe was, you hear something like 15 million percent. So prices double every day. We don't want that to happen to our country, but we need to go beyond just being hopeful and being prayerful. We must take concrete steps. So rising crude oil. So our crude oil production plus condensate and gas are on the increase. Just this morning, there was a report on channels that says that the rig count, that is the number of rigs, is rig that used to do, drilling. The rig count in Nigeria has increased from 8 rigs to 44 rigs. Now, rigs are not coming here for vacation. So when rigs come to Nigeria, they're coming for production. So that tells you about the outlook. In other words, we expect Nigeria's production to be on the increase. Some people are worried that the price of crude oil per barrel is $68. Our budget benchmark is 75. And I say, why do people like to worry themselves too much? What is important is, are we receiving dollars from crude oil to help us stabilize the naira and provide dollar liquidity? Are we receiving dollars from crude oil to provide revenue to the government? And the answer to both of those questions is yes and yes and yes. In 2024, we barely got $1 billion from NNPC because they said they were using the money to pay subsidy. In 2025, in one quarter alone, we got more than we got in the whole of last year. Government revenue for the first 5 months of this year, because June just ended, the first 5 months of this year is already up about 40% on 2024. So government is not in a crisis situation for revenue. So if the price of crude oil is going down, people should not panic and be doing all manner of negative analysis, because your expectation, your popular narrative will drive your reality. So the narratives that we put out are very, very important. If the price of crude oil per barrel is going down, why are people not focusing on the fact that this means lower energy costs for businesses and households? And if businesses have lower energy costs, it means that they have more profit. If they have more profit, there's more growth, more expansion. Why don't we normally look at positive side of things? Even at $50 per barrel, Nigeria will make far more money in 2025 than we made in 2024. So let us be objective, let us be data critical, and let us be balanced in looking at the affairs of our country. We are being, upgraded by all the rating agencies. So these rating agencies spend a lot of time with our committee because they're interested. In fact, their biggest concern about Nigeria has always been revenue and then exchange rate management. So they spent a lot of time with us asking questions, and you could see that they see a difference in the approach that government is adopting this time around, which seems very credible, very believable, and also something that they could work with. And that's why they're all upgrading. Now, sometimes, if your country is just upgraded by just one notch in this credit rating, it can translate to billions of dollars in savings for you, both for you as a sovereign and for the entities that borrow in dollars. So these are big deal issues that we need to pay attention to and continue to sustain the positive trend. The capital market is doing well. Those who have investment in the capital market, they know that year to date, I think we're in the region of 20% already. So the stock market is on track to not only beat inflation, but to give very robust reward to investors, whether they are local or foreign investors. So that's good news. But we know that that stock market is small. The Nigerian capital market is about $50 billion. South African capital market is over $1 trillion, US dollars. So why is Nigerian capital market not 1 trillion? Why is it not 1.5? Because the bigger the size of your capital market, the better your capacity to finance development, both in the private and the public sector. So we all need to work together to promote growth in the capital market, but we are making progress. We have seen improvements in the inflow of FX, particularly foreign portfolio investments. But foreign portfolio investment is a stopgap measure. It's something to use in the short term because it's very expensive. You should quickly move from dependence on foreign portfolio investment to foreign direct investment to remittances from the NNPC and to diaspora remittances from people abroad, about $20 billion a year. We know Mr. Trump is trying to impose excise tax on remittances, but it's one of those things. So, for these reforms, I already have explained, I think, almost everything on this slide. It became necessary for us to do these reforms as a result of what I've just explained to you, because the fiscal space has been constrained. What I mean by that is Nigeria is not able to do what Nigeria would like to do. We are constrained, and the tax system is not conducive for growth. If you are doing business, small, medium, large, foreign, multinational, you will find yourself struggling within the tax system because the tax system is almost an impediment to your growth. Um, we've spoken to exporters, we've spoken to importers, we've spoken to manufacturers, we've spoken to foreign investors, and everybody just has this consistent concern about the tax system creating problems for them. If we are not taxing capital, we are taxing your investment in advance, we are giving you minimum tax, we are giving you multiple taxation, we have multiple agencies with multiple audits, refunds don't come, withholding tax rate is higher than your tax payable in one country, right? This is not a problem that God imposed on us. They are self-inflicted pain that we needed to remove. And those are some of the things that we have now addressed in the new tax laws. So fiscal environment, tax policy, tax laws, and tax administration, all of them need fixing. So that is why we are very proud of Mr. President when he insisted that he was not going to negotiate the need for the reforms. Not to do this reform would be not only to deny Nigerians of the prosperity that they deserve, it would also be to compromise the future of the country and unborn generation. So we therefore intentionally we looked at tax policy, we looked at tax laws, which is what led to those four bills that have now been signed into law. We also looked at tax administration. So it's a transformation, it's a reset. What is happening to Nigeria now between now and January 1st, 2026, when this reform will take off, has never happened in the history of this country. And I think the best time to be alive as an accountant is now. So let's move on. Now, on the next slide, you will see some of the key areas of the focus of the reforms. Now, many people would wrongly assume that the tax reforms are being done because we want more revenue for government. No, no, and no. That is not the main objective of the reform. To want to collect more revenue as a reason for your tax reform is to place the cart before the horse, because tax revenues do not fall from heaven. Tax revenues are the consequences of economic activities. If you want more tax revenue, stimulate more economic activities and more revenues will come. So for us, the focus of this was people-centric. Let's focus on the people. Are we taxing poverty? Are we taxing nano, micro, small businesses that are struggling to survive? What can we do to address that? Growth focus. What are the impediments to growth that we need to remove? Some of them are overregulation, multiple taxation, FX issues, lack of clarity, ambiguities, delay in government, business, and transactions. Can we identify and remove them and then promote efficiency? So the reforms are people-centric, growth-focused, and efficiency-driven. So we have fiscal framework around government spends its money, how government borrows, and how we raise revenue from taxes, from government assets, government-owned enterprises, and natural resources. And then there is the plan around facilitating economic growth, coordination of government policies, and then for tax changes, we have tax, we have levies, we have tariffs. Mr. Donald Trump is using tariff to turn the whole world upside down. So that just tells you the power of tax. Just because of tariff alone, which is just one small component of tax, Mr. Donald Trump was able to turn the whole world around. Countries panicked. negotiations were being done, deals were being brokered. Some countries are scared of going into recession, some see opportunities. So when you apply policies, including tax and tariffs properly, you can use it to make things happen. And when you don't do them properly, you can use that to create chaos, crisis, and even depression. So Nigeria has chosen the path of applying those policies positively for the interest of our country. We want our tax system to be progressive, so we have done that. A lot of rich people on this call, I know accountants are rich people. A lot of rich people on this call are not happy that we increase the marginal rate at the top for personal income tax. Even me, I'm affected. So if you're going to be angry, there's no point being angry, because even me too, I'm affected, and I should be angry with this committee and their reports. But it goes beyond us. It's not about us. It's about a purpose that is bigger than ourselves. It's also one of the reasons why some of the issues around regulating tax agents. So I'm a member of CIT and I'm a proud member of CIT. I'm a member of ICAN and I'm a proud member of ICAN. And I've been saying to anybody, to be honest, personally, I'm not playing one professional body against the other. That's not my focus. That's not something I even believe in. My priority always, and that's the same thing for all the members of my committee, is Project Nigeria. What will work for our country? If our country is working, everybody will find a space inside a Nigeria that works. If you are a successful person in a failing country, you are a failure, because you will not be respected. Even you can't live at peace. There are people who in their house now, the walls are not different from prison walls. Some people go out with security and mopo, they're looking over their shoulders. And you see countries where things are just very peaceful, because we've created the insecurity by promoting inequality and by benefiting at the expense of society. And that's why they say that the son of the poor person that you deny of the opportunity, that you deny of education, is the one that will create problem for the son and daughters of the rich person that has gone to the best schools. So it is in our enlightening collective interest to ensure that there is prosperity that is inclusive for all the Nigerian people. So in these reforms, we have measures to address all of that and to introduce technology and intelligence, so that if you are the one that likes to be lying about your tax affairs, we wait for you. If you're a tax consultant, and I've said this many times and I'll say it again, there are tax consultants in Nigeria, accountants, tax practitioners, lawyers of all different shades and sizes who sell tax evasion for a living. Somebody wakes up in the morning on Monday, they work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They are selling tax evasion to clients, and that's how they earn a living. What kind of a living is that? Because clients will say, my tax is 5 million, but I can't pay 5 million. They'll give you 2 million naira, 1 million naira to pay bribe to the tax officer, 500,000 to pay to government account, you to keep 500 for yourself. Not that you render any professional service for facilitating fraud. And then we close that audit or that assignment, go to another client, and we repeat tomorrow. That is not how to build a society. And I've spoken to many people and they said, I don't understand what they are going through because I work for a big four. And I said, well, I hear you, but there's no way to justify fraud. And someone said to me that as a practitioner, I have bills to pay, I have family, I have staff. When I insisted that my client should do the right thing, I was fired. And they got someone within 24 hours, they got another consultant who was willing to play games. So, how do I pay the bills? And I could feel for that person. What we have now done with the new tax laws, we have fixed that problem. How did we fix it? Currently in Nigeria, you are rewarded for doing the bad thing and you are punished for wanting to do the right. If you are honest, very, very honest, as a tax practitioner or an auditor today, those who are very honest on this call, they know what I'm talking about. Life is hard. Your clients don't want to pay you. Sometimes they sack you and all of that. We are turning that around so that in Nigeria going forward, it will be rewarding financially to do the right thing, and it will be very expensive and risky to do the wrong thing. That is why if under the new dispensation, you'll be accredited as a tax agent. One, you must pass the technical assessment. This is not just about I won a prize when I wrote ICAN exam. We like you, we congratulate you, but you're not going to use that to file returns. Do you know how to file returns? If your answer is yes, come and demonstrate it. If there are changes to how returns are filed, do you understand it? Technical competence. Number two, ethical compliance. You cannot see 10 million turnover and declare it as 6 million and say life is hard. You have to be honest. You cannot claim deduction for expenses that do not exist. You cannot make up the value of assets for capital allowance purposes. You cannot cook up your financial statements. I was speaking to a CFO just 2 days ago, a CFO of a fairly big company in Nigeria. They are still doing tax audit, not tax audit, they're still doing the audit of 2024 financial statement. They have not finished the audit. Suddenly, the CEO brought audited financial statements. When the guy opened the audited financial statement, he saw 2024. He jumped up and went to meet the CEO and said, "No, sir, this is a mistake. This must be 2023 audited account." So CEO said, "No, it's 2024." CFO said, "We couldn't have audited 2024 because we're still working on it." CEO called the guy and said, "Nobody is interested in this, your audited financial statement." They cooked it and they got an accountant to sign and stamp. We cannot continue to run our country like that. All of us must accept responsibility for what we have done wrong, but more importantly, to make a turn for the better and make a commitment that it doesn't matter how hard it is. As a person, me, my household, and everybody that can influence, we will do the right thing. Those drop here and there will eventually make the ocean for a better Nigeria. So we have some of the measures we have introduced, new withholding tax regulation. We have exemption for small businesses. We have the national fiscal policy that we are finalizing now. We had to put a pause on it when the tax reform bills became controversial. We are working on a new presumptive tax regime for Nigeria and strategy for taxing the informal sector. We also have budgetary reforms. We are working with the National Assembly to amend the Constitution. We are working with the Budget Office and Office of National Economic Planning as well. There is a single window that is going on, national single window, and there's a broader tax harmonization project that we're embarking on. Overall, the KPIs are enabling environment, policy coordination, fair taxation, sustainable borrowing, and responsible spending. So you can move on to the next slide. Some of the key highlights of the changes that we have include tax harmonization. We are harmonizing the number of taxes that you have to pay. We are harmonizing the number of agencies that come to you knocking your door wanting to collect taxes, as well as centralizing or harmonizing access to fiscal data. There should be one portal in Nigeria. In fact, my hope, and I'm hoping I can convince the government, is Nigerian government should have one portal, one website that is nigeria.either.org or ng, nigeria.something. And the only thing any Nigerian should have to remember is just nigeria.something. When you get to that website, you should see everything about all government, MDA, state, local government. You want to pay taxes, you want to see a report on budget, you want to see a copy of the constitution. Let's just go to one place that is central and harmonize the data we have as well as how we manage the economy. You would have observed from the new tax laws that we also harmonize tax identification. Instead of insisting on TIN, we now have what we call tax ID. And tax ID means we're going to be using a foundation data, which is NIN. We want to get to a point where all I even need to know about you is your phone number. Once I have your phone number, I have all the information about you. I can register you for tax by just having your phone number alone. So that is the way we are addressing harmonization. But this harmonization is still in progress because a lot of things we like to harmonize are in the constitution, like the taxes local government collects. And in the constitution, you cannot just use the tax reform law to amend the constitution. So this is still something we keep working on. We are promoting competitiveness. to provide level playing field for businesses. It should not be the case that some people are close to government, they get all manners of waivers, or they're able to manipulate the rules so they don't pay taxes, or somebody is in the free zone, but they are selling to the custom territory, competing with the person that is paying taxes. We can't continue with that. We must create a level playing field for everyone and make Nigerian businesses competitive both locally, regionally, and globally. We want to see Nigerian companies become multinationals, earning billions of dollars abroad and bringing them back home. And for Nigerians to go all over the place around the world to be the CEOs, to be the CFO. You know, when you have a country, when you have a company that is a Nigerian company, when you go global, you send Nigerians to those places to be the CEO. The way they are sending them to us now, you know, you see a company in Nigeria and the MD is Oyinbo, is a white person because it's a foreign company, you know. So globalization as well. Our new tax laws are promoting globalization. We are having minimum effective tax rate top up tax. If you do business in Nigeria and you beat all the loopholes and you don't want to pay tax, we come back and say you must pay at least 15%. Taxation of non-resident companies, significant economic presence, all those have been fine-tuned. Then there's digitalization, where we're going to be doing fiscalization and electronic invoicing, data intelligence. So if we say there's threshold exemption for small businesses, and let's say it's 50 million naira, if you like, manipulate your record and say you are a 50 million naira business, you never grow beyond 50 million, we'll find out, because there's so much information out there to find out whether you are lying or not. Our objective is that within the next 2 to 3 years, we will no longer ask you for your income. We will be the one telling you how much income you have earned using the intelligence we have within the economy. There will be more transparency by taxpayers. There's a lot of reports and reporting that taxpayers must provide. For example, you must produce your incentive benefit reports. We have things that tax agents must do. We're going to be tracking what you're doing. There'll be an account for you and a unique number on the system. This is not federal alone, this is national. So you must do the right thing. Some tax consultants are not even compliant. Imagine you're a tax consultant and you yourself you are not tax compliant. What moral right do you have to help somebody else comply? And as a matter of fact, you can't even give what you don't have. If you can't be compliant yourself, how can you help someone else to be compliant? So those issues will be addressed. You see better reporting coming from the Revenue Service, Nigerian Revenue Service. You see better reporting coming from the Ministry of Finance, because transparency is important for you to build trust. And without trust, growth that is sustainable is hard, if not totally impossible. We're making structural changes because we don't want to do this reform and somebody is reversing it in the next 2-3 years. So we want the reforms to be institutionalized. And the way we are doing that is where we need to pass laws, we have the laws. Where we need to amend the constitution, we are amending the constitution. Where we need to write executive orders, regulations, guidelines, public notices, explanatory notes, we are working on them. And then within the Ministry of Finance, within the Joint Revenue Board, and within the Nigerian Revenue Service, we are building the capacity, because my committee is temporary. If everything works according to our plan, by end of the year, we should step out of the stage once we are done with implementation and we can move on. And the institutions that will then take those things forward will be Ministry of Finance, Joint Revenue Board, National Revenue Service, and also the Fiscal Responsibility Commission. All of them are within the work we are doing now. So we are quite optimistic that these reforms will be sustained and Nigerians will see the benefits sooner rather than later. So you can move on. So some other highlights of the key changes include VAT reform. Good news, professionals. Before now, you cannot get input credit on your assets. You buy laptop, you buy iPad, you buy generator for your office. You even build the office building and you pay VAT on the fittings, and you pay for services, including you take a flight, and you can't claim those input VAT today. Under the new tax laws, you'll be able to claim your input VAT. That's good news. It's more money for the accountant, or at least lower cost of doing business. I don't know whether you want to pass the savings to your client, but whatever you choose to do with it, it is good for accountants, it's good for other service providers, It's good for manufacturers. It's good for service providers of all forms and shapes, small and large. You get that. And then there's zero rating for items. Nigeria, for a long time, I'm not even sure whether we ever implemented zero rated regime in Nigeria. So this is new. So this is time for you to start learning how do they do zero rated VAT in South Africa, in the UK, in Kenya. Learn. If you can, if there are people you have seen before, sometimes Nigerians will go, we like to go for foreign conferences. You go for a foreign conference and you're looking for other Nigerians to tag around with. Instead of you to look for somebody from Kenya, somebody from Ghana, somebody from South Africa, so that as we are talking now, you set up a WhatsApp group. Bring your friend in Kenya to the group, friend in South Africa, and start asking those questions. So we can make this very easy for ourselves and position ourselves to take advantage of the opportunities. Then we have the PIT reforms. I see comments from many accountants and tax practitioners, or saying they've taken away all the allowances and reliefs. So people say these people are not fair. I say no, it doesn't matter. What matters is what is your effective tax rate on the income that you earn. The reason why we remove the reliefs and the allowances is that they just create complication. Let me give you an example. If I pay you 1,000 naira and I say I will take out 20% as non-taxable, so that means the amount that is taxable is 800. On the 800, I want to tax you at 20%. So your tax is 160 naira. Okay, look at the process we've gone through to arrive at 160. You have to take 1,000, calculate 20%, 200, deduct 200 from 1,000, remaining 800, multiply 800 by 20% to give you 160. And I say to myself, why am I complicating things? Why don't I just say to this guy, I'll give you 1,000 and I'll tax you at 16%. So all that you need to do is take 1,000, multiply by 16%, and it's 160. The answer is exactly the same. What we have even done is, instead of taxing you at 16% without allowances, we have reduced the 16%. So anybody who is earning about 2 million naira per month or less will see a reduction in their monthly PAYE. I know there are high net worth individuals on this call that will pay a little bit more. I apologize again. People who earn low income, if you earn about 1.3 million naira a year, that's about 108,000 per month, you will pay zero PAYE. So this new regime is really, really helping the low income, middle income, and asking the rich people to pay a little bit more for us to build the society we want. The CIT reform. Part of the reform for CIT is reducing the corporate tax rate from 30% to 25%. It was a very, very hard battle because the governor said we should not reduce CIT. So we had to look for smart ways of convincing the lawmakers, and it wasn't easy. But good news is, at the last minute, we managed to convince them to include a provision in the tax laws to reduce CIT from 30% to 20%, and it will take effect based on the order by the president in consultation with NEC. So what we are now planning to do is we've requested for an audience with NEC and Governors Forum. So we'll try and go and beg and appeal and explain. Once we convince them, we'll just draft an executive order and give to Mr. President and say, the governors now agree with us. Can you please sign? I'm really hoping that we can make this happen before the end of December so that the lower rates can also kick in as of January next year. We also have CGT reform, no longer CGT rates. Many of us, in the days we were writing ICAN exams, those of us that are a bit old, and, even our elder, colleagues on this call, we wrote with 10%. In fact, there was a question in ICAN exam in 1 year where the examiner said it is 10% because the law says it's 10%. Explain. That year, I think only 3 people passed the final exams. So but this 10% has been with us for so long. We're looking for 10% everywhere to calculate capital gains tax. The problem with that is that system is regressive. What we should do, because capital gains is just income, is your income, just that the form is that income is coming from an asset that is chargeable, right? So it's like saying in Nigeria today, personal income tax rate is 10% for everyone. No, it doesn't make sense. Dangote should not pay 10%, and the gate man that is struggling to find transport money before the end of the month will also pay 10%. In a system that is progressive, you pay more the higher you earn. So what we have done with capital gains is to remove the specific rate for capital gains and allow capital gains to assume and take the life of the income tax of the taxpayer. If you're a low income earner and you have capital gains, you pay 0%. If you're a middle income earner, your effective tax rate is 7%, you have capital gains, you pay 7%. If you're a high income earner, high net worth individual, and your marginal rate is 25%, you have capital gains, you pay 25%. If you're a small company, have capital gains is 0%. You're a large company, you have capital gains 30 or 25%. So that is the way this capital gains tax story I just told you now, this is a whole certification for ICAN to even do. The same thing with VAT, because these are completely new dispensation. Issues around rollover, threshold for exemption, for investment in the capital market, for owner-occupied property, for forced to vehicles. There are so many things that we must learn and understand. And if those of us on this call don't understand the tax law, who is supposed to? Is it the medical doctors that understand it, or is it supposed to be the market women? So we, on behalf of ourselves and on behalf of our country, we owe a duty to understand this reform and help Nigeria implement it well. If we fail as a group, these reforms will fail and the country would have lost a lifetime opportunity. And I pray that this will not be the outcome. The outcome will be that all of us will love our sleeves, will do the hard work. This is not easy work. If I tell you, even being the person leading the drafting of the tax bills before it was signed, if I tell you how many times I read those bills, you won't believe it. You think that's the only thing I do in my entire life. Right? So it's hard work and we should put in the work. We are curbing evasion, making evasion more expensive, harder. If you don't pay the right amount of tax on an asset, you can't claim capital allowance on it. If you haven't paid the right amount of tax on an expense, it is not deductible. You import an item, you didn't pay the right amount of import duties, you can't claim capital allowance on it, right? So we are making tax evasion more expensive so that when you do the maths, even you tell yourself it's better to pay the right amount of tax than trying to evade it. So we are curbing evasion, but we are moderating avoidance, because avoidance is not illegal. This is where accountants use their brain to move things around to save some money. We can't stop that 100%, but we want to curb the excesses. We want to moderate, how aggressive you can be in trying to do tax planning. There's the Office of the Tax Ombudsman that will help the taxpayers. So some taxpayers cannot read, they cannot write, they don't understand finance, they've never seen a copy of the tax law, and they don't have the money to hire lawyers or accountants. So they should not be disadvantaged because of that. So the tax ombud will be their advocate. So you can call, you can speak Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, Pidgin, anything that comes to mind, Hausa, and just talk to them. You can be angry with them, you can write English that is incorrect, just talk to them, no formalities. Send emails, make a call, send WhatsApp. We are planning to set up those call centers. So there's help on the way now for government to help you. Nobody should come to you and say, we give you an assessment of 5 million, you have 48 hours to pay, and then you start panicking. All that you just need to do here is just call the ombuds, right? We've given the ombuds sufficient powers to be able to intervene and solve issues. If you are wrong and you call the ombud will tell you that you are wrong. This is not you asking for protection by all means. It is making sure that the right thing is done and consistently advocate for simplification of the tax system. I already told you about tax agents. We are working on the guidelines now for tax agents regulation. We'll create a platform. We involve the professional body. So we'll be coming to ICAN. We'll go to CITN. We'll go to ANA. We'll go to MBA. Everybody will have their say. But at the end of the day, one thing will hold constant: Nigeria's interests. Withholding tax regime, we have done that already, so you can move on. And then there's the economic incentives for priority sectors. I won't go through all of these, but just to remind you that we no longer have pioneer status. Pioneer status would end by 31st December. If you already got pioneer status or approval in principle, you'll be allowed to run the course of your pioneer incentive. But nobody from the 1st of January 2026 will get pioneer approval anymore. We will now operate under the Economic Development Incentive Scheme. You'll be eligible based on the lists of the eligible sectors. You'll be eligible based on the minimum amount of investment, and there's a sunset. Sunset means effective from 1st of January 2026, you count 20 years, and that is when this incentive will expire for agriculture and food. You count 15 years, that's when it will expire for chemical and building materials, and so on and so forth. So, of course, if we are getting closer to 20 years and government takes the view that this incentive must continue, government should go and amend the law, right? What we're doing before is we leave the law open-ended and say we will amend it, and we have not been amending. We've changed that now. Amend the law in advance by putting a sunset. And if somebody is not happy, let them actually do something about it when the time comes. For so long, we had reconstruction investment allowance trying to provide incentive for the civil war that was done before many of us were born. So we had things about rural, telephone, when we now have GSM. We have instances in the oil and gas sector where we lost billions of dollars, more than $10 billion, because we have some tax credit scheme that we introduced, and there was supposed to be a breaker for us to review, and we did not review it for many years, and the country lost enormous amount of money. So we've now changed that in how the law is drafted. So I'll conclude. If you move on to the next slide, by telling you issues around the outcomes we expect, there will be a lot of benefit for businesses, for household, and for government. I will not go through these because you have the slides, and we've explained many of them, from having lower burden, lower compliance costs, lower rates of taxes, exemption for small businesses, higher threshold for low-income earners, and ensuring that we have investment incentives to promote investment in a way that is not subject to a lot of abuse, ensuring that we provide a level playing field for people who are doing the same businesses, rewarding compliance and good behavior, and punishing bad behavior. So that if you're a honest person, you have business that is endless for you from January next year. If you are the person that has been selling evasion for a living, you have two issues to deal with. First, you have to change your ways. I was almost going to say you have to repent. So you have to change your ways to not be selling evasion. Number two, you have now to learn how to file returns, because when you are bribing tax officers to submit return, they don't even look at the returns. It doesn't need to be correct. Even you don't even to know the correct thing. Now that we're going to be looking at what is correct, you are learning all over again. The good news is all of us are learning all over again. Nobody has an advantage as of this point. Maybe some of us that have spent a lot of time on the reform, but otherwise, everybody is on the same level. You can decide now to learn the right thing and begin to do the right thing. Move on to the next slide. So, in terms of the readiness and impact assessment, we must plan. This is more than just tax. If you forget everything, remember that these reforms is more than tax. You need to plan around people. You need to plan around process. You need to plan around technology that will be required, a lot of training, capacity development. ICAN should be busy, very busy from now on. And ICAN should make money. There's actually nothing bad in making money, right? I'm not saying we should charge members a lot of money, but you should develop programs and charge for it. Whether you're an accountant or you're not an accountant, let people want to come to ICAN to learn about these. Do certification, right? Train people. You can even make it international, because some of the things we're doing, I had the privilege of being invited by the African Union. In fact, just about, I think it was even last week, I was in Nairobi when they called me from the State House to say I should come back quickly, that the president wants to sign the tax bills. The African Union is trying to learn from us. They are developing a strategy around revenue mobilization for Africa. So they invited me to come. So you may find that some of the learning of what we're doing now, if you take it seriously and you become a subject matter expert, you suddenly become international. Your market is not limited to Nigeria. Your market is, Africa and the rest of the world. And then execute. So there's no point doing a good plan that you don't implement. One of the things that Mr. President did that is very commendable is to set up a committee, not just a committee to advise the government, but also a committee to implement. Just imagine if we had been asked to write a proposal to the government to recommend changes to the fiscal and tax system, and we say to the government, rewrite the law, repeal VAT, repeal CIT, make it progressive, and we write those beautiful reports and we take photos and we leave. When do you think they would have drafted the bills? And if they did and they sent to the National Assembly, who will be doing the explanation when the thing became very controversial? So this was a good thing that government did in making this our committee to be both developing ideas and thoughts along with the Nigerian people, but also working with the government to implement. The same thing you must do in your organization or in whatever spheres you find yourself. Do your plan, but more importantly, you should implement diligently. So, on the last slide before I conclude, it is just to say to you at the end of the day, you have to connect the dots. We can build a prosperous Nigeria together. We have better days ahead of us because the worst is behind us. We are on track with the progress we are making. If you are the one that is following the economy and you just rise over the noise. There's a lot of noise in Nigeria. A foreigner was visiting about 2 weeks ago, and the guy said, Nigerians complain about everything. The guy was just in Nigeria for 2 days. He said Nigerians complain about everything. But I think it's our right to complain. Feel free to complain. But when you finish complaining, look for something constructive that will move nation forward, not just complaining alone. So the worst is behind us. The macros are moving and trending in the right direction. GDP growth rates, debt service to revenue ratio, tax to GDP ratio, balance of payment, even exchange rate, right? So those macros are moving in the right direction, and those macros would influence the micros. It is the micro that would count for the Nigerian people on the streets. That is where they will say, I went to the market and one bag of rice is this amount, one tuber of yam is still this amount, one basket of tomato is this amount. Those complaints that people say, my rent is this, my salary has not gone up, those are micros. You will not see micros immediately when you start a reform. It will start from the macros. The responsibility of the government is to fast track how quickly the macros translate to micros so that people can feel the impact in their lives. And I think we all can make it happen. We must stay the course of these reforms. We have put in a lot as a people. We have made a lot of sacrifices. It is not the time to turn back. We have to see it through as well as the benefit that come with them. You must seek to understand. You cannot afford as an accountant to only rely on the narrative on social media, the one on TV, and the one on newspaper. You must get to work yourself. You must, if you haven't read, you must read every word of every sentence, of every provision, of every paragraph of all the four tax laws. There's no substitute for it, so you have to read it yourself. Have a plan. You can be doing bedtime reading, you can do reading on weekends, you can read when you're using the toilet. Just find somewhere and be reading. As you are reading, make a note so that you'll not be saying Taiwo said or Yomi said or I can said, right? You don't need to be, you can say that it's not a crime, but you yourself must be able to speak authoritatively. Seek to understand and understand within context. And finally, position yourself for this great opportunity that is coming. I have said before at an event that if accountants and tax professionals were listed in the stock market, the day Mr. President signed those laws last week, 26th of June, your market value should double in the capital market, because what that means is the prospects you have now are much better than anything we've had in our history as a country, and of course in all our careers for those of us on this call today. Nigeria is not where we need to be, but we're on track and we're making progress. And like Abraham Lincoln said, you see that on the last slide, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Thank you very much. And hopefully I was able to stay within the 1 hour you gave me. If I spent more than 1 hour, then I owe you the remaining time another time. Thank you very much.
You can send in those emojis to just appreciate Taiwo, for that wonderful session. So you are not just so far off. It's just 10 minutes above. So we charge per minute, Taiwo. So
My president will pay. So send the invoice.
all right. Thank you so very much. I agree with you. Better days are here. Not even ahead. Better days are ahead. Not that they are ahead. They are here. One of your best quotes when you were talking, it's you said the best time to be an accountant is now, and I can say that within that profession, even tax practice is in its best of days. And for members online, if you are not member of tax faculty, then you need to rethink whether you are properly aligned. A number of questions are flowing in as you were talking, but quite honestly, if they had even waited for you to finish, I think many of the questions have already been touched. So I may end up picking one or two just to be able to engage. But I can see that my president is still online. I've seen a picture of a few members of the presidency. So maybe if Mr. President is ready and it would like to, maybe I will just first allow a few minutes of remark from your end. We have less than half an hour to go, but quite honestly, Tao had covered quite a number of the questions, so we can save about 10-15 minutes for a few more questions, maybe one or two. But I would like to yield the floor to Mr. President if you do have maybe one or two comments or remarks just to make before we pick some of the other questions from the box.
No comment. Today is the
Okay.
day for Taiwo. So my comment that if he still have some slides that he has not touched, he can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. All right. So a number of the questions. So I don't want to take that temptation of yielding the floor to Taiwo. We will have another 2 hours. And we'll be fine unless members want to agree that we can extend the time beyond 4. So a few of the questions, Taiwo. So one, and it's coming from different platforms. So if we didn't pick your name, just please pardon us. Because we are harvesting questions from all the social media platforms. So the first one I want to read out is that from your own vantage point, and so this questionnaire wants you to point out the single biggest structural change that this reform has introduced into our fiscal system. That if you are going to summarize it in one word, or you are going to identify one structural change, which is the biggest that has happened to our fiscal landscape, and what will this mean? How will this fundamentally change the face of the economy over the next 5 to 10 years? You're on mute, Taiwo.
Thank you, my brother. So yes, so thanks for that question. So for me, it's quite easily governance. So the one most transformative, most impactful change in this reform is the governance of the tax system. That governance goes from NRS to the Joint Revenue Board. We used to have the Joint Tax Board. We now have Joint Revenue Board. To the governance around the Office of the Tax Ombud and how they report to the National Assembly, what they must publish online, to the governance of taxation by taxpayers, holding them to account, to the tax agents, to the tax officer, right? This governance is at the heart of everything. And it's also what is driving like harmonization. So this is what will be the most transformative reform item. I know it's difficult to place your hand on governance because it's not like, if I had said that we increase VAT rate now, you say, that's one item. Unfortunately, the answer to this one is not one section of the law, it's so many sections.
Right. No, thank you. And I totally agree. I've been at fora, even during the reform, that some of the key provisions, like the tax ombuds particularly, just the sheer scale of the thought process, putting everything under one agency from a collection administration perspective. So quite a number. So it's not so much in just the tax type or the tax number. I think the overall framework, I honestly align with you. Now, the second question is around implementation. And you did spoke to it when you were talking in terms of some additional steps that will need to be taken, because we know that a reform of this scale and complexity require a lot more, from people to process to technology, interagency collaboration, not just on the taxpayer now, I'm talking of from the revenue authorities perspective. So you touched on it briefly earlier on, but maybe if you can further break it down, the roadmap to implementation, particularly from a regulatory standpoint. So, explanatory notes, circulars, guidance notes, even getting technology and platform ready. I know it's 6 months, but that's quite a short time if we don't seize every day of the 180 days that we have to make sure that we do the right thing. So, any thoughts around what is already at play or what is going to kick in anytime soon from an implementation perspective? How is the revenue service getting ready, essentially, to administer?
Yeah, very good question, my brother. So, we talked about implementation as the real work. So everything we have been doing, including drafting the bills, passing them, signing them into law, is just brainstorming. This is you trying to figure out as a country what you want to do with your tax system. The real work starts now with implementation. So we take it very seriously. And it was the reason why we said 90 days will not be enough. Our national tax policy says minimum of 90 days. And we said, to be honest, even 6 months is a stretch. But we were also tempted by the fiscal year. If you don't do a cutoff by 31st and start a new regime on 1st, you create another complication of, imagine if the commencement date is 1st of March, then you have to remember 2 months out of 2026. So we put everything together and said, by the way, we have the capacity, we have the resources, we have the intellectual knowledge, we have the will power to make this happen in 6 months. So, so excuse me. So what we have done in my committee is we have done a detailed implementation plan. If you see our plan, you'll be what's the right word? You'll be begging God for strength for us because there's a lot to do there. But we're happy to do those things, and we're not doing them alone. The FRS, which will become NRS, they have set up a whole unit, a whole department, headed by two directors. Let's say coordinating director supported by a director, and they have the complement of staff just to implement the reform. So FRS is the most prepared of all the key agencies. Then there's Ministry of Finance. Ministry of Finance is also working on their own capacity and structure for implementation. Then the Joint Revenue Board. For the we have a retreat. I can't remember the date now, where we're sitting down with all the states to go through the details of what does this mean, for stamp duties, excise tax, personal income tax, capital gains, virtual currency asset, everything. We're going to put pen to paper. Our plan also includes how do you get government to comply. We did withholding tax regulation that it took effect 1st of January 2025. This is 3rd of July 2025, more than 6 months after. And I've received many reports from companies that do business with government, and government is still deducting the old withholding tax rates. And one government person said he has not received an instruction. I said, government passed a law, gazetted it, you are waiting for an instruction. So if you only work based on have been directed, we will write it. Maybe it's the right letter. So all those letters of have been directed, we will write. Regulations, we will draft. If we need guidelines, we will produce explanatory notes, public notices, everything, not just to produce them. We will produce them, work with the relevant. We as presidential committee, we don't even have any constitutional role. We don't have any legal role in all of this, right? So we're working with different stakeholders. We work with those people to have those instruments ready in time for public consultation. It's not like they come and sign something and release it in December and say commencement is there. No, our threshold is within the next 90 days, those instruments will be ready. So you have enough time to take input for people to disagree, to fight and agree again, and finalize them and publish them. There are forms that we need to redesign. There are ERP that people need to develop. We're discussing with the guys who provide the SAPs, the Oracles, the Microsoft people, to make sure that their system can allow fiscalization for businesses in Nigeria. That conversation is ongoing. We're having a foreign mission from France. They're sending people to come and sit down with us next week. We have the international partners that are working with us. We have the Nigerian partners, we have the organized private sector. We're going to be coming to the professional bodies. We'll come to ICANN officially. I'm just so happy that ICANN is proactive on their own. But even if you did not invite me today, we would have come to you, and we'll still come because we need to co-create the implementation together and do this in the most effective, most efficient, and most impactful manner for the interest of our country.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Quite. So the road ahead is still rough. So we wish you well. As, we wish ourselves well. Yeah.
Yes,
So yeah. So maybe one other closely connected question is um, the one focusing on culture and reorientation, and all of these social economic, contract thing that, sit at the heart of, getting Nigerians to do the right thing. So this questionnaire is saying to complement all these beautiful reforms, there should be, a new orientation, for, the country to achieve its maximum results. So any thought around what's currently being done or what steps needs to be done, and maybe it's even like a charge to the institute on what can be done. But essentially, how do we move people and get the compliance culture better? We know all the statistics and all the data points around the level of tax penetration and compliance. We know all the argument back and forth as to what government says on its side, what the taxpayers say on its side. But I mean, it's almost like a logjam, right? So how do we catalyze a new culture of compliance? How do we get the people to understand what they need to do, and that they need to do that without necessarily waiting for the other side? But how do we also encourage the culture of accountability, probity, transparency, especially as some of the compliance elements have already been infused into the law, the transparency that is required, the accountability that is required. But just help us put all of this together. So what do we do from getting the people to do the right thing on both ends of the divide?
Yeah, excellent. So you're right. We are in a very bad place today in terms of the tax culture, both from the taxpayer side to the government side. Transparency is poor, compliance is low, evasion is fashionable. Like you can evade tax and go and publish it, like nothing will happen. There are no consequences for doing the wrong thing. There are no rewards for doing the right thing. Tax agents do their own. Tax officers do their own. It's just all over the place. So to build that tax culture, what we're doing is first and foremost, we're using data to establish where we are today. So the last time we conducted and the first time that a tax perception study was conducted in Nigeria was 2019. And I was privileged to share that roundtable for the Nigeria Economy Summit Group. The funding came from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation at the time. We are currently speaking with some of our international partners to sponsor a rerun of that study. It essentially establishes where you are in terms of the tax culture, the belief in the tax system, the level of tax moral, tax perception, fiscal exchange for taxes you pay, accountability. We must have data. We cannot just, because we're not politicians, you now come out after 6 months, anything that is positive, you put the credit on your tax reform. No, we want to track real things that are associated with the reform. And if the reform is not working in any way, we also want to track it. So we want feedback from people, we want monitoring. So, but the way we want to address the tax culture is to go to the root cause. Part of the root cause, some of the things we are fighting is we don't think that government entities that are doing business should be exempted from any tax. You know the danger in that? When somebody is heading a government agency and they're exempted from tax, the person doesn't pay tax. They develop the head and mindset that you don't need to worry about tax, right? And it then affects their tax compliance in their personal life. If they set up a business, they don't pay tax until you are chasing them up and down. If you make it clear that paying taxes is non-negotiable, many of the billionaires in Nigeria today would easily give a donation of 10 billion to government or anyone, but they would not want to pay 1 billion naira in tax. There's a difference between gifts and obligation. So that whole thing of building the culture of paying taxes is what we have designed in the tax law. It's also the reason why we said the people that are too poor to pay, should not be paying, and let the rest of us pay. These other people that are poor, they will pay consumption taxes. And as they have the capacity, even though they are not paying taxes, they will file returns. That's building culture of taxes. Every one of us. I know that people on this call now, less than 5% of people in this on this call file their tax returns for 2025 year of assessment. Many people will say they've deducted their PAY. We know very well that the law says we must file returns. How do I know that the percentage is low? In the FCT, there was a TADAT assessment, and only 1.9% of people in the FCT file returns. In Lagos State, less than 5%. This is also another opportunity for accountants. Now, imagine that only the top 5% of the Nigerian population need help to file their returns, because the richer you are, the more help you need to file your returns. If you are not an accountant, just imagine the amount of work that the accountant will have to do to be able to do that. So we're building a tax culture. We're building it from the top. We're building it across middle class, lower class, government, private sector. Everybody has to learn to do the right thing. If we get this right, with the kind of system we are trying to build, it will not only help us solve the problem with taxation, it will help us solve other national problems. For example, if you steal money or any asset that you cannot explain, the tax system will throw it up. The IRS in the US has a legal requirement for you to disclose stolen assets. So if you have stolen anything, whether it is cash, whether it's government resources, you must declare it in your tax returns, right? Now, what this means is we can also know who is poor from the tax system, so that God forbid if you have COVID-19 or COVID-20 something, or like I already said God forbid, before somebody will start saying, what's wrong with this guy? And you want to help them, you don't need to put money in stacks of Ghana must go and be going to villages, because those money often don't get to the desired destination. What you need to do is to open up the tax system. You will see the people that are poor. You see their bank account. If they don't have bank account, they have phone numbers. You can do full stamp. They just get alert. Pam pam. We have given you 10,000 to go and buy yam and gari. This is how to run a system that works. It's not. These things are not built from heaven. They are
Yep.
built by human beings. And now we are willing to do that, and we're optimistic that this will transform our country for the better.
I believe so. Absolutely so. Taiwo, thank you so much. I'll just allow you this personal question for just 2 minutes, and then we'll yield the floor. So it's been a very engaging and enlightening session. So this final question says, as chairman of this landmark committee, right? This is legacy question for you, Natayo. So, what will you consider success by the end of your tenure? You've sacrificed so much to put into this. So, what legacy do you hope that this reform will leave with Nigeria by the time you would look back and say, "I'm happy." I took that decision. So, what would you consider your success at the end of this tenure, and what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Yeah. Thank you. Very important question. So it's something that personally I set out from day one, and also for the committee, we also have the one we've set for ourselves. And this is the reason why we said we will not celebrate our efforts. We will wait and celebrate not just the outcome, but the impact that those outcomes will make. So we already have those benchmarks. There are those of them to do with revenue, like Nigeria hitting 18% as to GDP ratio within the next 2 to 3 years. They want to do with the ease of doing business. So when I see FDI has been declining for the past few quarters. When I see FDI in the billions of dollars, this time next year, 2 years time, when I see adverts every day because companies are expanding and they're looking for new employees, when I see the CIT returns and the taxes people are paying because they're making so much profit, when I see the capital market grow into hundreds of billions of dollars, when I see that the poorest person and low income earner has more disposable income, when we see stability in the price of goods and services, right? When you see GDP growth rate that is robust, close to 10% or above 10%, and it's inclusive in sectors that are labor intensive, carrying everybody along, then I can just go on vacation permanently until I'm 95 or something. My job is done on earth. That will be my legacy. And I pray that God will help us to make this legacy happen, not just for me, but for all of us.
Well, we say a very loud amen to that. And Taiwo, when it happens from wherever you are vacating, you just get the news that some of your members have submitted your nomination form to be president of the country.
Ah,
So
they will vote for me.
all right, all right. Thank you so very much. I think
Thank you, my brother.
That's been very enlightening. That's been very engaging. We want to bring it to a close. This particular point. Just before I yield the floor to Vice President, I believe she's on to help us do the wrap up. Just to mention to members, you will have been seeing the comments on the portal wherever you are that to get your credit hours, you need to log on to icanportal.org /members /attendance and create. You will have seen the link. So please make sure you don't lose the credit points by doing what you need to do. So if Vice President is ready now, okay, maybe first Vice President it's coming on. But I'll yield the floor now for the vote of thanks and wrap up. Thank you so very much, sir. You're mute, sir. If you're mute, sir.
Can somebody unmute me?
Yeah,
You're already on mute. Go ahead.
We can hear you now, sir. Thank you so very much for coming on.
Esteemed President of our great institute, Malam Haruna Maya, MNI, PhD, FCA. The Vice President of our great institute, Hajia Quinsley Segosime, MNI, FCA, who is unavoidably absent. The second Deputy Vice President, the immediate past President, respected council members that are online, the Registrar Chief Executive, our guest speaker, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, FCA, the Chairman of the Taxation and Fiscal Policy Faculty, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro, FCA, professional colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is my singular honor on behalf of the Governing Council and the entire leadership of the Institute to deliver this vote of thanks at the close of what has indeed been a highly enriching and strategic engagement. Let me begin by extending our deepest gratitude to our guest speaker, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, FCA, for the masterful way you have unpacked the critical elements of the Nigerian evolving tax system, tax reforms. Your illuminating presentation has provided us with both clarity and the practical pathways needed to navigate these reforms effectively. We appreciate your tireless dedication to repositioning Nigeria's fiscal landscape in line with global standards. I must note that you've given us 3 key points. We are no longer where we used to be. 2, listening to business news every day, local and international. And finally, ICAN should be busy. Our heartfelt thanks also go to Chairman of the Taxation and Fiscal Policy Faculty, Mr. Yemi Olugbenro of FCA, and to all members of the faculty committee. Your unwavering commitment, meticulous planning, and hard work have made this event remarkably a success. You will continue to demonstrate how our faculties serve as formidable engines for the professional knowledge and national development. To our dear 61st President, Malam Haruna Yahaya himself, MNI, PhD, FCA, we thank you for your inspiring opening remarks and your visionary leadership, which consistently positions our institute at the forefront of conversations critical to Nigeria's economic progress. To all our esteemed members who joined from across the country and beyond, your active participation reaffirms the strength of our shared purpose to advance the accounting profession in the public interest and support policies that foster inclusive growth. As we depart from this platform today, let us carry forward the insights we have gained and commit ourselves to being true partners in the implementation of these far-reaching reforms. Once again, thank you all for your invaluable time and contributions. God bless you, and God bless the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. Secretariat, I think we can have the ICAN anthem and the national anthems.
Bless God, I can count the treasure in triumph of an array, standing stronger in harmony, building a land together, dreams of a founding fathers, we are striving to attain our counting values that we share through all ages be sustained. Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Noble ICAN, your accuracy we cherish. We uphold your integrity.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, RCE.
Thank you, my chairman.
Our first DVP, thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. President.
Young brother.